You know what I'm guessing you don't have, at least under normal circumstances, is time for reflection. I mean, think about it. How often do you really sit back and think, mull things over, consider? I'm guessing that's probably not a normal part of your daily routine. And to be honest with you, it's not a part of most Americans' daily routines. We're typically very busy people. We have a high emphasis on production and on success, and those things generally do not relate, we think, well with reflection. Today we're talking about Trinity in our Trinity groups, Trinity session. We're talking about study. This is the fourth installment of a series of study ideas. The first, we've been talking about the four things that study requires, right? The first is concentration, comprehension, and repetition, right? Those are the three things. So repetition, concentration, comprehension. Today we're talking about reflection, right? And if you're anything like me, like you don't take any time to reflect on the things you read any more time than you take to look in the mirror in the morning. Like that's the most reflecting I do, is doing my hair and brushing my teeth. I think that reflection comes hard to us because it's hard. Like it feels unproductive sitting there for so long just thinking when I could be doing so many other things. And let's not forget, like probably the biggest barrier to that is like the entertainment that we have access to in our phones, like 24/7. Whenever I'm like bored or could have a moment where I could be like thinking and reflecting, I find myself just drawn to the addiction in my pocket, right? Like just to mindlessly scroll through Instagram and like things that I think I should like, like which isn't really any more productive for me. Jesus had this way of teaching. He used these short stories, and there's one in Mark chapter 4, verse 30. I want to read it for you. Again, he said, "What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what shall we say, shall we use to describe it?" So he's telling this parable. It's a short story with a meaning that is not obvious to your first hearing. It's something that's not trapped in time. It has the ability to sort of like transcend thought and thinking over different cultures and generations. It's a really cool way of teaching. So here's what he says. He says, "What shall we say that the kingdom of God is like?" Or what parable shall we use to describe it? "It's like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such big branches that the birds can perch in its shade." Now, the first time I read this, it was like, I was like, mustard seed? Mustard is a condiment, you know what I mean? Like, and only upon like a little further study, a little bit of comprehension, you learn like the mustard seed is this tiny little seed, the smallest of all the garden seeds. But it's true. It becomes the largest of any garden plant when planted. I mean, large enough for birds to sit in the branches of the tree. And so I think about this and I spend some time reflecting on it. And as I take time, meaning starts to emerge. Like that's the cool thing about parables is that as you reflect on them, they become more meaningful. It's almost as if the parable begins to read you. And so I'm reflecting and I think about a seed starting small, growing big. And I started thinking about my own life and the ways, because it says the kingdom of God meaning like it's not a physical kingdom, but a spiritual reality, right? Like this idea that Jesus is ordering the world and asking us to participate in that with him. And I start to think about the seed of that. In my own heart, that's true, right? The seed was planted a long time ago, but it's been a very slow, gradual growth in my heart. And the more time I give it, the more care I give it, the more I remove obstacles in my soul to that plant blooming, the kingdom growing in my heart, the larger it becomes. Slowly and surely, I give over more space in my heart to Jesus. I become more like him. I value the things he values. I care about the people he cares about. I become more caring and kind and patient and gentle and trusting. Reflection is a key part of study. See, the whole idea of study, right, is intelligent effort towards the written, spoken, obvious, like, aspects or words of God. So when we reflect on those things, we allow our minds and our souls to collaborate and to bring meaning that's really true and tangible for our own life today. For example, with Mark 4:30 through 32, I begin to think about, okay, so what's getting in the way of me, of the kingdom of God flowering in my soul? What are the relationships that are under tension? Where are the things I need to ask forgiveness for? Who are the people I'm not forgiving? Who are the people that have hurt me, or who are the people that I've hurt? You see how, like, one very vague story told 2,000 years ago to a different group of people in a different time with different cultural values can still have a tremendous amount of meaning to you and to me today if we allow it to open, if we give ourselves some time just to reflect on it. So when you're reflecting, a couple of things: don't force it, let it come, and be patient. Probably the hardest thing when you're reflecting is just to sit there, to not be distracted by your phone or your computer, to just let that thing you're studying study you right back. Today's Trinity practice is really cool. Actually, earlier in this very chapter, Mark 4, there is a different story. It's called the parable of the sower. Mark 4, 1 through 9. Jesus tells a story of 4 different kinds of soil. Here's what we want you to do. Your Trinity practice today is to read Mark 4, 1 through 9 5 times on your own, 5 times. Reflect on it and carefully identify which soil you most identify with. Then, of course, share your findings in your Trinity group. Guys, have a wonderful day. We will see you back here tomorrow. Happy reflecting.